Jason LaShawn of Blue Bolt. I'm going to introduce the broadcast today and get us started. Today's webinar is called Sales has Changed, How the Modern Buyer has Changed the Sales Process. Next slide, please. Our presenter is going to be my business partner, Chris Reisner. Chris acts as our Chief Strategy Officer at Blue Bolt. He helps our clients strategize on how to use digital marketing to improve their outreach to customers and tip more leads in their funnel and so on. So he thinks on these topics every day, and he put this presentation together. Go ahead and next slide. A little bit of housekeeping here. So number one, ask questions at any time. I'm going to be personally keeping track of those and writing them down, and then we'll review those questions probably at the end, or we may take some in the middle if we find a good spot to pause. I'll kind of play that by ear. Secondly, when the webinar is done, we're going to take the recording, we're going to take the slides, we're going to post it online, and we'll contact everyone to let them know that this information is available. So don't worry about take notes, obviously, if you want, but you will get the deck and the materials as well in a day or two. Next slide. And briefly, I'll hit the agenda here. So we're going to start out by looking at the modern buyer, defining who this is, taking a look at the persona and determining what it is they're trying to achieve and how they might be different from the pre-modern buyer, I guess. Then we're going to investigate the methods of engaging this buyer and how those methods are different from times past. Then we'll summarize and kind of give you some takeaways, and then finally we'll hopefully provide some good answers. All right, and with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Reisner, who's going to lead us through the presentation. Take it away, Chris.
Great, thank you, Jason. Yeah, so today we're going to start by focusing on how the modern buyer has changed the sales process and how the sales process is being redefined as the internet gets a little bit more mature. So before we do that, we want to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane. The buyer's journey was pretty much a straightforward shot that was triggered when a buyer recognized a need, which is how it's always happened. And they were relatively uninformed and had to actually go to a salesperson, and they had to be led through the sales process fairly linearly by the salesperson instead of being able to do any of their own research. Today's modern buyer is well informed and has essentially the ability to jump around from content to content and being able to redefine how they want to go about the sales process. So an example of that would be in the old days when you were buying a car. I know when I was buying a car, I'd actually have to go to a place to, the car dealership, and I'd have to learn about each car individually, other than going to read Car and Driver magazine or something like that and get the high-level items around reviews. But now you can get a litany of information before even stepping foot into a dealership. I now know I don't need to go to Kia, as an example, because I don't want to buy a car there because they don't have a car that's that I would be interested in. I might have to actually go to every single individual dealership and learn about each one of them individually, and even 10 years ago before that was available. So it's just changed, and there's much more of information available to be able to do your own research and figure out where you want to go down the buyer path. And what I'm trying to describe is that the internet has just changed everyone, particularly the buyer, because now we're all experts. And we can do our own product research, and there is really no salesperson required until the very end of the process where you actually really need to engage. And so because of that, we're all trying to figure out how to change our buyer process and our marketing angles to figure out how best to engage everybody to be able to figure out where to go. And generic content for the modern buyer just plain doesn't cut it. They need personalization. Companies such as Netflix and Amazon make it the norm to know what the consumer is doing. They track what the consumer is viewing and purchasing and offer suggestions based on their likes and interest. This is a screenshot of my specific thing. If you see up in the upper right hand corner, it says Christopher, and because I watch The Office, it's asking me about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is a funny show, and one that I actually do like, and it's suggesting it's a 97% match to me. So it's doing a good job over time of figuring out how to do that. Not only does this keep the consumer engaged with the product, but it keeps them coming back, and I'm not going to cancel my Netflix account. So one size does not fit all for the buyer, modern buyer. They expect you to know who they are and provide value to their buyer journey at the moment that they need it. Marketing has accounted for the changes in the modern buyer and has updated its efforts accordingly. So we all need to figure out how to do so as well. Our competitors are already there. The good part is that consumers are increasingly comfortable and willing to give up their personal information in order to get better, more personalized and relevant content. 56% of consumers are okay with providing personal content, and 63% of millennials, which means that over time they're going to continue to go up how many people are willing to give up information for more personal content. On the other flip side, there's a price to pay for not actually personalizing the content to the individual or business, because 2/3 of consumers are saying they want to be treated like an individual and get that personalized content, and 89% of business buyers, which is the B2B interaction. So it's not only consumers, it's already also B2B world. Marketers have made quality content their focus and are always working to create content that pulls people forward towards their product and company. So what we're trying to do now is just create content that drives people into our sales funnels and hopefully that will engage people and personalize that over time to be able to get them to the point where they're through the funnel and want to talk to a salesperson. That's kind of how things work now. And that approach essentially means that inbound works. Since its inception in 2006, the inbound marketing methodology has helped marketers create and deliver content that will appeal to precisely the right people in the right places at the right time. This makes marketing relevant and helpful to the modern buyer, and it does get results, as you can see on the screen. 54% more leads, 2 times below the average cost, and a whole lot of savings. That's on average, by the way, so the larger company you are, the more savings you're going to experience. The inbound methodology focuses on marketing that attracts strangers and makes them visitors, converts visitors into leads, closes leads into customers, and delights customers so they become promoters. So we all want people that are talking about and promoting our own businesses and becoming advocates. This is a fundamental shift from outbound marketing efforts, but has proven to be an effective way to turn strangers into customers and promoters of our business, and is 100% catered to the buyer that we're seeing right now, which we're defining as the modern buyer. The inbound methodology focuses on marketing that attracts strangers. We don't just want any traffic to our site, we want the right traffic. By implementing the inbound marketing methodology, marketers are able to attract the right kind of prospects, visitors, to our websites through blogging, SEO, optimizing web pages, and social publishing. Once we have attracted website visitors, the next phase of the funnel is to convert those visitors into leads by gathering their contact information. By setting up forms, calls to action, landing pages, and a centralized database, we have a way to convert visitors into leads that does not disrupt the modern buyer's journey and allows us to capture their information and learn what they are up to and who they are. So we'll convert visitors into leads by producing forms and calls to actions and landing pages. Marketing has taken the first step to evolving the methodology to better connect to and attract modern buyer. Successful inbound know they need to map out and deliver content based on the modern buyer's journey, which is this map you see right here. As a result, 3 out of 4 marketers across the globe prioritize an inbound approach to marketing, and inbound marketing campaigns achieve higher ROI than outbound campaigns. Now it's time for sales to step up. Sales needs to question and reassess their current practices and evolve to meet and surpass the modern buyer's expectations. So let's talk a little bit about the sales efforts for a minute. Are they cold calling and leaving cold voicemails? Is that what's happening today? Prospecting has changed. Fewer people have phones on their desks, and every phone now has a caller ID. I know that I avoid calls every single day. Are they relying on mass emails? I know personally my inbox is filled with mass emails I delete without even opening every single day. Is your sales team attending trade shows as a way to meet your new prospects and gain new leads? This may still be an effective actual way to go, and I know at Blue Bolt that's what we'd still do. Unfortunately, there are only a handful of people that we can see at every one of these, and it's not scalable to the point where you're going to continue to grow. We actually don't typically actually have booths, though. Is your sales team giving the same generic presentation over and over again? And when was the last time that you actually made significant changes to your presentations? This is a critical portion as well. We talked about personalization, and the presentations need to be personalized to what the buyer needs instead of just a generic presentation that everybody gets over and over and over again. So these are all legacy sales processes. Legacy sales is centered around around the way salespeople sell rather than how people buy. Salesforce evangelist Tiffany Bova hit the nail on the head when she said, today's sales organizations must shift from trying to control their internal driven sales cycle and truly embrace the new customer-driven buying cycle. Otherwise, prospects will eliminate you from their consideration list and buy from your competition. And she's absolutely right. We need to all adjust over time and adjust ourselves to how people want to buy rather than how we want to sell. So legacy sales methods need to be revamped. It's time for your sales efforts to match your marketing efforts. Otherwise, you will be removed from the modern buyer's equation. You need to think about the modern buyer and evolve your sales efforts to meet and surpass their expectations. So the new method of selling to the buyer is the salesman isn't always needed. Here's a fact. It's just a fact of life these days. They are not always needed, and they're there to support. And there's a shift in the way buyers buy that we need to account for, a changing of the tides, if you will. Thought this graphic was funny. We must evolve our efforts accordingly, and our businesses will suffer because we'll start losing, and it'll shift to our competition. We know that our friends in marketing have evolved to better connect to the buyer. We've heard that the inbound marketing methodology is 10 times more effective for lead conversion compared to outbound methods. So what if there was a way to take the lessons learned from inbound marketing and apply to the sales process? What if there was a new way of prospecting? What if you could proactively combat the issues and no roadblocks your sales team faces when trying to connect with the modern buyer? The average sales development rep makes 52 calls daily. It takes 18 dials to connect with a single buyer, and the callback rates are less than 1%. Leads responded to within 5 minutes are 100 times more likely to be qualified. So if you get a lead, you should respond immediately. You're 4.2 times more likely to get an appointment if you have a personal connection with a buyer, which means making sure that you have that personal connection and you've met that person before or have a some sort of network connection. The answer here is, and I'm pleased to introduce you to this inbound sales methodology, the new sales playbook. This is a concept from HubSpot, and it takes you from identifying the lead or to connecting with them, exploring their needs and wants, and then advising them best on what their path is. The inbound sales methodology accounts for all of the changing factors of the modern buyer and is all about transforming the way we sell to align with today's empowered buyer. Yes, the buyer has all of control, not us. It's a hard pill to swallow, no matter what department you work in, but once sales realizes this, it makes all the difference. So we're trying to get a more power shift. Sales, not just marketing, need to figure out who the buyer is, what they're searching for, and how they can add value to the buyer journey. This is the foundation for inbound sales methodology. It's all about using data and insight to add value to the prospect buyer journey. So why bother? But that just sounds like a lot of work, and sales needs to hit their quota. They don't have time for this, right? And the reality is everybody's got a day job and they need to figure out what to do with it. Well, the current industry trends analysis tell us that change is necessary. Orbs Insight and BrainChart found that C-level executives in particular know that sales productivity is paramount to enabling a company to grow. 71% rank it as of critical importance. Sales teams can't afford not to adopt the sales inbound methodology. Screen just shows some of the places the buyer goes to conduct product research online. The modern buyer can get information about your product, competition, price right from your website. They can even purchase, in most cases, from your site some of the time. Why do we even need the salespeople? The goal for inbound methodology is for the salesperson to become the buyer's Yoda. The salesperson has to position themselves as a trusted advisor. They need to add value, become a leader in their space, and anticipate the buyer's next move so that the buyer trusts the salesperson, just like Luke trusted Yoda. If you follow the inbound sales methodology, you will become the sales Yoda in no time. Inbound sales methodology is broken down into 4 stages: identify, connect, explore, and advise. We will talk about each step at a high level and show how sales can leverage insights in order to connect with the modern buyer. The easiest way to identify who your ideal buyers are is to set up workflows that will alert sales when a stranger has visited your website, filled out a form, or opened an email. This doesn't completely replace your current sales strategy. For example, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't research and contact a targeted accounts list. You should be proactive, but an inbound sales strategy, content should be used as a conversion point and should be leveraged to increase your contact rate with those target accounts. You have identified leads, so now you need to know your potential buyers. Find out what blogs they're reading, what LinkedIn groups they belong to, what thought leaders they're following on Twitter, retweet, guest blog, anything to position yourself as the thought leader in the space. And when connecting with the buyer, always lead with a message personalized to the buyer. You can refer the buyer's industry, role, interests, common connections, pretty much anything that you can connect to. Offer advice around the buyer's interest and their specific goals. The goal here is to build trust and authority. You can really start to qualify leads in this stage of the sales methodology. Do your research on social media. Some things to consider and research. What is the buyer role in the company? How long have they been at the company? Did they come up through the marketing or sales or product groups? Who is their boss? Do they know anyone at their company? A lot of research that can be done and lots of questions that can be asked, including what's their favorite quote, show, or movie that you can pretty much learn sometimes through Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Many people discount Twitter, but we don't at Blue Bolt. We see it as an excellent person, market, and industry research tool. Unlike LinkedIn, which gives heavy business focus, Twitter can give you insight in their personal interests, their hobbies, and what burning questions and issues they are dealing with. Your prospect is asking questions on Twitter or possibly responding to things that they're actually interested in. Other ways you can use Twitter include understanding what your competition is up to. You can go to search.twitter.com and enter your competitor, and it will list what questions they're asking and who they're interacting with. So you can get a lot of competitive analysis from that. Outside of social media, there are also ways to see the whole picture for every lead and connect every tool to your team uses, social and more. Tools like this pull in social intelligence but never answer questions such as what web pages of mine have they seen, what content of mine have they downloaded, what webinars have they visited, what trade shows have they gone to, know any trends or niche areas that person might be interested in looking at, and what is their lead score in comparison to my other leads. So you should have a decent lead scoring methodology and strategy associated with your website and how to go about doing that. Next is the explore phase. You want to leverage initial buyer interest to develop additional trust and uncover deep buyer goals through exploratory conversation. You'll have to create exploratory call guides based on personas for your sales teams to leverage, and once you do, they can use these guides during the explore phase. The goal here is really to understand and uncover why they're interested in your products or services, and really try to dig into what their personal needs are. This phase is used to determine whether the person is a good fit or a bad fit. During the explore phase, you can work in unique product or service differentiators to help the buyer understand how your service or product can help solve their specific particular pain points to help them reach their goals. And the last phase is advise. During this phase of the inbound sales methodology, you need to tailor your assets to the buyer's persona and leverage all of the information you have gathered from an exploratory call. This means tailoring presentations that align product value with the buyer's needs and using terminology the buyer knows and can relate to, or conducting a product demo that illustrates 3 features important to the buyer in order of importance to him or her, which is what Blue Boat does. We actually try to understand what they need and try to hit the high points of product demos during the presentation so that we make sure that we take care of their goals. If you could even run an ROI analysis customized to the buyer's metrics and businesses, that would be incredibly helpful. The key is to let the buyer know that you have done the work on your end and make them feel like you're adding value to the journey. You've recognized that the buyer is a good fit for your company, and you're helping the buyer understand why you are uniquely positioned to help them as opposed to your competition. By this stage, inbound salespeople have developed a relationship with the buyer so they can get honest answers from them and get feedback on how they're doing in the sales process as well. They can figure out the buyer's timeline and work backwards to create a plan to meet the deadline. The inbound salesperson transfers all of his or her knowledge to the post-sales team and checks in with the buyer every now and again to help ensure their continued success. I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but take a moment to consider the differences between legacy salespeople and inbound salespeople. We'll make sure that you get this this document so you don't have to study it too long. But essentially, legacy salespeople aren't aware of what buyers are active in the buyer's journey. They just don't know because they don't have enough information. Now we know a lot more about what somebody's up to and where they would be in process. A lot of times we would do just a cold outreach, either through email or phone call. Whereas now we get to participate in, bringing them in through content that is produced on our website. Hopefully they fill out a form to download a white paper or attend a webinar like you're doing right now. And so that helps through the process, and we learn more and more about that person as well as the connections to social media where we can gain even more information. So the sales process is no longer about interrupting, pitching, and closing. It's about leveraging the inbound sales methodology and listening, diagnosing, and prescribing. It all comes back to knowing who they are, what they're searching for, and how you can add value. The inbound sales methodology is a path for sales teams to follow to figure out who their business buyers are, what the buyer is searching for, and help them figure out how to get down further in buyer journey. So now we're ready for questions and answers.
Okay, so great job, Chris. Thanks for the presentation. So we got a couple of questions to field from the audience here. So first, I'm going to go back to earlier in the presentation. So when you were discussing personalization, you mentioned focusing on quality content. Can you discuss and describe in more detail what kind of content would support a modern buying process? What do you mean by quality content, I think is the gist of the question.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially this just comes back to the persona and understanding the buyer in general. So part of the early process of really going through the sales methodology and the marketing methodology would be to understand who in the organization or what type of person is the buyer and who's going through it. So for example, a CMO of a company that might be buying services is looking for something different than the operations manager that might be looking at the same thing. Let's just say you're going to sell CRM services or customer relationship management software. The CMO is going to be looking for how this is going to drive more leads and help them more efficiently in their operations. And the operations person is probably going to be looking at how it can drive costs down and how they can get more efficient over time. And so you're going to create content that's associated with each one of those buyers and their specific needs. And so that might be a white paper that is all about that is all targeted at a operations person, as an example, that might drive efficiencies within their organizations by using a CRM solution.
Okay, so you're focusing more on making sure that the content is tailored to a persona. So personalized content, as you hit, that's more important than the format of the content. Is what I'm taking away from your answer.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be focused on that, but it also needs to figure out, so at the top of the funnel, it would be things like blog posts and, primarily blog posts at the top of the funnel. The middle of the funnel would be somebody that's a little bit more engaged because they're going to give you some, fill out a form to get to a white paper, which is more in-depth piece of content, and a webinar, and also showing up and visiting you at your booth at a physical trade show. And so those people are showing more buyer intent. Down further even in the funnel are things like case studies and testimonials and things like that, that essentially when they're doing the comparison between you and your vendors, you need to show why you are the right one after they've already decided to make this choice to go down the road with whatever you're trying to sell. Okay. So it just kind of depends on where at in the buyer journey you're trying to create the content. Is it more top of the funnel, middle, or bottom of the funnel? And then you need to tailor it to the persona that you're trying to approach at that particular moment.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's. The next question was, what first steps would you recommend for a company that has relied on outbound sales tactics in the past and is now trying to get started with inbound? So I guess first steps is what the
first steps are all about trying to understand and figure out who you're trying to sell to in the first place. So it's all about that persona management and persona discovery process. So first of all, it's firmographic. So are you trying to sell to anybody, or demographics, depending on whether you're a B2C or B2B company. So firmographics would be like the type of company you're trying to sell to, what industry they're doing, how big that organization needs to be. Demographics would be how much money they make, where do they live, maybe, things like that. Are they male or female? So it just kind of depends on B2B or B2C to start there to say who you're selling to. And even within there, the demographic portion of a B2B environment would be who are you trying to sell within an organization, because more than likely you're not selling to everybody. And so you probably care about a particular type of individual, whether it's if it's HR software, you're probably selling to a VP of human resources, or the C-suite level, as an example. And those are the people you want to try to reach. But you probably have influence on other people because the account-based management or marketing as well. Other people are involved in the buy process. But the point and the first steps are to identify who's buying whatever you're trying to sell, and trying to understand what they go through when they start even looking and thinking about the problems that you solve, as well as how they go through that buyer journey from discovery of the issue and problems that they're solved, all the way to the point where you actually get a sale. And so you need to understand that best and as well as possible before moving to any of the next steps, which is all about persona development.
Okay, so identify the personas you want to target, understand their buyer process, and then delve further into the persona development after that. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so the next one's a good one. How would you recommend getting organizational buy-in for moving toward inbound tactics? So I think that just here is you got an organization that has been focused on more traditional selling methods, outbound, cold calling, and so on. How do you start to turn that ship around towards the tactics that you're advocating?
Yeah, so the answer to that question is partially taking an inward look and saying, are your current sales and marketing methodologies working right now? And are you growing to the extent that you need to? And if the answer is no, then you need to do something different. And everybody already probably feels it in the first place. So then the next question is, what do you do about it? And the right way to go about that, or the next step in that process, is to explore and say, okay, well, what's everybody else doing to be successful? And this is the next trend, is to essentially try to come up with another process, another way about going to handle the modern buyer and what they're going through. And so in that process, you'll have to evaluate ROI and try to come up with a bunch of statistics and sort of background data, as we provided on some of these slides earlier. But there's a whole bunch more that all the marketing automation and sales methodology industries can provide that show that this is the right methodology to use, and the ROIs that it can provide.
Okay.
But I mean, to be honest with you, if you're growing fast enough and you're having enough success, more than likely you're going to have an uphill battle, and there's no reason to change. But clearly the reason for the question is because something needs to change.
Right. Well, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. But if you're wondering if it's broke, then you probably need to address that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and I think we have one more question here. So next is this addresses the sort of blocking and tackling here. So if an organization doesn't have writers on staff, maybe they can go through and figure out their personas and figure out the buyer's journey, but now getting to the point where actually creating the content, how can they go about getting this content created?
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of schools of thoughts on this. I mean, there are whole different industries that have been created around outsourcing writers, and it's a interesting challenge to overcome, but you do not have to hire internal writers to be able to accomplish this. You can get outsourced writers, and there are networks and websites to use for that. I would suggest if somebody is actually really interested in figuring that out, that they contact me directly, which on the next slide is my contact information. But yeah, I mean, it just comes down to who needs to, how detailed the content is, what type of content needs to be produced, and where you would need to go get that. Unfortunately, it's not a straight line answer, because it's always different. If you're writing on surgical techniques and for a brain surgeon, then you're not going to be able to get somebody just randomly to write about that content information. So you'd have to go about it, doing it somewhat more carefully, as opposed to somebody that might be available to write on real estate topics, such as the best way to get a mortgage or something like that. So it just kind of depends on the content and the level and detail of the content. But there are networks to be able to find people that are appropriate to sell those, and you just need to go out looking for them, and there's a number of them. So it just comes down to what is the most appropriate for your particular need.
All right, that makes sense. So it depends, but the good news is that there are, for at least some kinds of topics, there are networks out there that you can go to find contractors or freelancers to write some of this content.
Correct.
All right, excellent. Well, that was the last question, so I think we can wrap it up. Chris, thanks for your presentation today. Very thoughtful, very insightful. And then for everyone listening, we are going to take this recording for the presentation and get that posted here in the next day or two. And we'll also reach out to everyone that participated and share the slide deck with you, so you've got that content as well. So thank you, everybody, for participating and attending. I hope you got some insight out of this, and stay tuned for more webinars to come in the future. Take care, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.